Well, hello there. Here we are again. I'm out here making several little short videos. Or trying to, anyway. I'm out here at the Kansas Landscape Arboretum. Went for a nice little walk, and I'm here in a nice little area with some benches and picnic tables, and just thought I'd sit down and take a load off. And got the sun right in my eye, but that gives good light for the video here. So anyway, I thought I'd quickly tell a story about my mother back in the day. And again, I probably forget a lot of details, but that's kind of why I'm doing these videos now, trying to, while I can remember a lot of stuff. But anyway, back in the 80s, and if you haven't watched that video yet, made a video about the Boy Scouts when I was in Boy Scouts. But anyway, back in the 80s when I was in Boy Scouts, I couldn't have been but, I don't know, 11, 12 years old. Every year we did a project where, and I think I got a old picture or two here I scanned, I'll put here. We collected all the Christmas trees after Christmas. January 1. That's the dog coming up here. See what I'm up to. Lots of leaves around here, pretty noisy. So, but anyway, we used to collect those. We'd pick them up, or people could bring them down, and we kept them down the street from my house, down where Seacare is now, and that used to be AD Honey Farm. Our assistant scoutmaster, Bob McCann, ran that down there, taking care of bees and collecting honey and all that. And there's a big lot there, so we would have all these Christmas trees. January and half of February, I think, we would collect these trees, and then us boys would pick off all the artificial tinsel. Back then, tinsel was a big deal, the little aluminum foil spaghetti looking things they'd hang all over the tree to, make it look like frost and whatever. Well, that was, we had to get all that off of there, because what the project was is we would load all those, we would have a camp out, winter camp out at Milford Lake. It was actually down at the old, oh, did you hear that owl? It was down at the old rock quarry. Boy, he's talkative. And we would always do this in February because the lake was frozen, and we would haul all the trees down there, and it was under the instruction of the Fish and Game and the Park Service, and we would use the Christmas trees to create artificial fish habitat for mainly crappie. So and back then the lake would freeze over solid every winter. Nowadays, it doesn't get cold long enough. We might get a little bit of ice and then it goes away, but Milford used to freeze several feet. Good grief. Milford would freeze several feet thick to where you could walk out on the lake and whatever. So we would camp out there, have a winter camp out, and haul all these trees out after we'd cleaned them up and got them ready. Because if the fish eat that tinsel, it can hurt them. So I had to have everything artificial stripped off of those trees. And then we would use cinder blocks and wire, and we would tie several trees together with several cinder blocks together out on the ice. And then when the ice melted in the spring, the trees would break through and of course get dragged down to the bottom, and that would create brush piles for the fish habitat. So anyway, moving on, we're out there camping and doing our business, and every year, because we were working so hard instead of cooking for ourselves, my mother, which was, oh, by the way, she was officially the first woman allowed to be a official Boy Scout leader back in the 80s. A lot of people didn't know that. She started out because a lot of women did the Cub Scouts and Webelos, but where she had a boy in Boy Scouts, and my dad wasn't really an outdoor person a lot, and he worked this swing shift at the power plant, so he really didn't have, his work schedule didn't allow him to be a scout leader much anyway. But anyway, moving on, she would make a big pot of chili. Her homemade chili of her design was never really a recipe or anything. She had it up here. It was all homegrown tomatoes, and she'd cook the beans, and a lot of the times it'd have hamburger and sausage. And back then we used to get a lot of deer roadkill for the Boy Scouts for our camping trips. They'd bring the roadkill in, the county would, to the locker plant, and they would butcher it up and save what was salvageable, make hamburger mostly, and donated it to the Boy Scouts. So this chili was really good. But anyway, several years in a row, she did that and no trouble. Well, this one particular year, it's the end of the day, it's getting dark. Now we're done working, and my mom's not there yet. We waited and waited, and it's like, where's that pot of chili at? Back then there was no cell phones, so we couldn't call her, say, hey, what's up, where you at? We just had to, I think someone did run into town to try to find her and see what was up, because she should have been there hours before. Well, what had happened was, in the middle of the afternoon, she had the big pot of chili all ready to go. She had this, the Scouts had this big pot that we use for soup suppers and whatever and like that. But what she would do is make the chili in the big pots, and then she would put it in smaller pots for transport. So she's got 2 or 3 smaller pots half full of chili in the back of the car, and I can't remember for sure if it was a deer or just a big bump in the road and she was running behind and hit this bump or what, but what had happened is she spilled one of those big pots of chili in the back seat in the car all over the place, and it just literally gallons of chili in the floorboard of the car. And she knew, her telling the story and everything that happened, she knew that, well, this isn't something that, So she immediately run back home and pulled it out somehow. She whipped up another half a batch. I mean, she was able to save half of it because it was in the other pots that had the seat belts around it or whatever. But there wasn't going to be enough chili to feed everybody, because you had all the Scouts, all the adults, all the volunteers, the parents. I mean, it was quite the deal. She was feeding, 50 people. So she was able to run back home. It was early enough in the afternoon. Run back home, fry up more meat, cook more beans, get more tomatoes. She canned a lot of tomatoes, whole tomatoes in the jars, and so she had everything she needed. Just she hustled, and whipped up another batch. Might not have been quite as good as the first batch, but what she did was she told us at home she brought in the other chili that didn't get spilled, and she kind of mixed it all together, loaded it up again and headed out to camp. She finally got there, just after dark. Got us all fed and whatever. She kind of told us real quick what happened, but we heard the whole story later on. But crazy deal. And there was still gallons of chili in the floorboard of the car. She didn't worry about cleaning that mess up until after. She just knew she needed to get back to Clay Center. And looks like I got a car coming. Get another partial batch of chili made and get the heck out there. Well, I'll put a picture here of the award that she got, but because of all of her hard work and effort over this deal, and to make her feel better or whatever, the next court of honor we had, the adults had come up with this special award for my mom, specifically about, the chili incident, and they nicknamed her Splash. So she was known as Splash for quite a few years, and it says that on the award here, and here's a picture of it. I'll put it right here. I'll probably show it several times in this short video here at the end. And it wasn't until years later, where the real appreciation for that award sunk into her. She just thought it was ha-ha funny, and take it with a grain of salt and whatever. And it took her a little while to realize that they were really showing appreciation. And somewhere, I think a year or two later, they even made her a collar pin to reinforce that appreciation. And I wasn't able to find that in her jewelry box anywhere or anything, but it was a scout badge, little scout pin with the year and my mom's name and the word Splash on it, so she could wear it on her uniform. It's quite the deal. So she was an awesome in the Scouts. I call her a scout leader. She even later on in years, she even taught classes. She started out just being the secretary, because she was always there, supporting me and encouraging me, and she got more and more involved because the parents were always involved, and before you knew it, she had her own uniform. They did a lot of paperwork and lobbying with the Scouts, the Kansas Scouts Association or whatever, Scout Council, to allow her to officially, in an official capacity with the Boy Scouts, to be a scout leader. And she got that done, and I went through some bunch of old scout stuff to try to kind of find that anything like that to kind of show you, and I didn't really find anything. But so she opened the door, and she was at the leading edge of female scout leaders in the 80s, and now there's lots and lots. I bet half the scout leaders are women now, and In fact, the Boy Scouts aren't even Boy Scouts, which we can talk about that another time. I've got mixed feelings on that, where now it's co-ed. And I can, like I say, kind of understand, because girls have the Girl Scouts, but, you know, the Girl Scouts were a little bit different back in them days. They sold Girl Scout cookies, they made clothes, they learned to sew, they did things like that. They went camping maybe once a year. And I can see where, you know, the girls wanted to do activities like the Boy Scouts did, you know, learning fire building and camping skills and going camping, going to summer camp. I mean, the Girl Scouts went to summer camp, but it was like a big, you know, from what I understand, it was just like a big girls' slumber party. You know, they did a lot of fun things, but, you know, I can understand the girls were wanting more of the outdoor experience and learn life skills like the boys. So I can understand that, but yet, why not take the Girl Scouts and turn it into that, instead of just, you know, trying to merge with the Boy Scouts? But anyway, that's my opinion. I don't have that big a beef, but it's a little bit of a sore thumb with me. You know, the Girl Scouts, they could have made the Girl Scouts, you know, they could have developed the actual Girl Scouts to do more things like that, instead of just abandoning their stuff and joining in with the boys. You know, so now there always needed to be leadership. Now I think they call it 3 deep leadership, where there needs to be 3 adults for every 1 or 2 boys or whatever to do activities. So now there has to be lots more moms involved for when the girls go. So, but anyway, moving on. Just thinking fond thoughts of my mother, and I don't know that I even really showed the appreciation to her throughout my life that I should have, over all that she did for me and the Boy Scouts back then. But as a young people, young man, you don't think to do things like that until later in life. You know, I did. When I got older, I told my mom a lot that I was proud of her and appreciated her. I was as proud of her as she was of me in the Scouts, but I just feel like I didn't tell her enough, and we didn't talk about it enough. And she thoroughly enjoyed it just as much as I did. The Boy Scouts of America, then and now, it's not the same now, but it's a very good program for youth. So, but anyway, just wanted to share that story. Kind of a fun story of kind of what happened, and I don't want that story to go away when I'm gone. I want my grandkids and my great grandkids and, you know, people to know this story. So anyway, here comes a car, so I'm going to call this a video, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm out.